The following show is brought to you in part by support from Robbins, Kaplan, Miller, and Cerisi. We don't just practice law, we make history. Online at rkmc.com.
Hello and welcome. I'm talking tonight with Justice Wilhelmina Wright. She is the first female African-American justice just very recently appointed by Governor Dayton to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Delighted to have her down at the studio with me now to talk about her life, her career, and about leadership. I have a quote I want to share with you from Aristotle, and he said, "Excellence is not an act, but a habit." And in reading your resume, in talking with you some now, it seems that that has been a motto, in a sense, for you, Justice Wright.
Well, thank you. It certainly is something I strive for, and when one does that, I find that I'm pleased with the work that I do, the challenges that I face, and feel really empowered by striving for excellence.
So setting the bar high for yourself.
Absolutely.
As well as others, I'm sure. I want to tell you just a little bit about her career to this date. You went to Yale, where you got your BA in literature, and I read, and I thought this was a fun thing to share with the viewers. You were on the national championship crewing team.
I was a coxswain for Yale women's crew, and that was a very formative experience for me, frankly, in terms of my leadership development. The coxswain is the one person who's not the rower or not rowing in a crew shell,
Right.
and is leading and directing and encouraging and
Motivating.
exactly.
Urging.
And yet experiencing the wins and the losses with the rest of the team. So as kind of a coach and leader within the boat.
It's a wonderful analogy, I would think, or image to keep in your mind through the years.
Well, it is. It was one of those experiences, and I think women's athletics has so much to offer in terms of leadership, but it was one of those experiences where you face stiff challenges and headwinds, and you learn how to persevere, how to work together, how to motivate each other, how to rely on each other. And those are very much experiences and talents, I would say, that I use and call upon every day in my work and in personal life.
What we would call transferable skills and
Very
talents,
much
right?
so, yes.
Right. You then went on to Harvard to law school. And did you go directly from Yale to Harvard, or did you take any time out?
I went directly to law school, and certainly that's a trend that is less the norm now, and many law students come to law school with other experience, work experience, travel, and educational experience besides their college experience. That was not mine, and so I have gotten those other experiences on the back end of my law school career.
But keeping that momentum is helpful too. I think for a lot of students, I know it was for myself, just keep going while I'm in the study mode.
It was very helpful for me, and pretty much the traditional route. Now I think in legal education, so many law schools really value the life skills that their students bring when they've taken some time off. And certainly that work experience can help bring context to an understanding of the law. So there are a lot of different routes that can lead to law school. And I wouldn't say one is better than the other, but a rich law school class has, I think, students from a variety of backgrounds and experiences prior to coming to the law school classroom.
When you were at Harvard, what were the statistics in terms of female versus male students? I know now at least 50% of most law schools have female graduates.
You know, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. I know that we were not at the 50% mark, and one of the things that was very important to us was to, as students, was to push the faculty to diversify and make sure that the faculty looked more representative of American life. And as the law students were, or the student body was becoming more diverse, to push the faculty to be more diverse as well, bringing those rich experiences and intellect into the classroom from very diverse perspectives.
I know you were the editor of the Civil Rights Review while you were there, so you were a busy grad student. You came to Minnesota in about '95.
That's correct.
And got a job as assistant attorney, state attorney.
Actually, it was assistant United States attorney, so I was a federal prosecutor. I was working on criminal cases in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Our jurisdiction was the entire state of Minnesota, and I received lots of trial experience, lots of experience traveling throughout the state, meeting people in various communities. And so it was a wonderful way to be introduced to Minnesota's rich culture, its geography, and its people. It was a great first job
so you
in
were a
Minnesota.
Prosecutor
I
at
was.
the time, right? And that was in '95. You said you now feel like a Minnesotan.
Oh, I am a Minnesotan. Yes, I do.
You are one. Although you grew up in Norfolk, Virginia.
That's correct.
I want to continue on with your career, but in just a minute, I'll remind myself, help me remember to come back and talk a bit about your parents and family. After your work as a prosecutor, you became a district court judge for Ramsey County.
That's correct.
And you did that from 2000 to 2002. And then you were appointed to the Court of Appeals as a judge. And you held that role for 10 years.
Yes.
So that was a big hunk of your career. I found it interesting to read that you also were presiding judge with the redistricting this past year.
That's correct.
Or a year and a half, and that was a challenging job, I'm sure. And then your appointment to our Supreme Court here in Minnesota was just this past September.
That's correct.
So were you surprised? Were you, how did you react to that appointment?
Well, I was sitting at my desk when the phone call came. I had interviewed perhaps 2 weeks prior to receiving the phone call, and so had been waiting a little bit and wondering.
You were one of the 4 finalists.
Yes. So the governor uses a merit selection process. He opens up the process, and anyone who's interested in being a judge or justice may apply. And that's what I did. He then used a commission, his Judicial Selection Commission, to cull through the applicants. As a result of that, there were 4 finalists, and those finalists met with the governor and members of the governor's staff and the chairman of the Judicial Selection Commission to interview for the position. And then it was after that there was a period of waiting, and the governor called me in my office. And so by no means was I expecting his call. I was delighted to receive it. And
keeping your fingers crossed.
Most definitely.
Yes.
And so very honored to be called upon to serve in this capacity.
Are your folks still alive, Justice Wright?
My mother is still alive. My father has passed away, and was able to come to my investitures as a trial judge, he was, and as a Court of Appeals judge. My mother, of course, has been at all of those investitures, and she is a very proud parent.
I'm guessing she would be so proud. Where are you in the, do you have siblings? Where are you in the lineup?
I
was going to
do.
ask.
I have an older brother, so I am the younger tag-along sister who thought that anything that Billy could do, I could do as well or better.
Why not?
So we have a wonderful friendship now and just are a mutual admiration society for each other. We really support each other.
Do you think there were some things that your parents did in your early days that prepared you to be such a good student, to rise to all the challenges you've had work-wise?
Certainly there were. They are, I think, the single most important factor to my success, because at a very early age they taught my brother and me to read. They value education, and so taught us to value our education and helped us understand that we were capable of doing anything that we wanted to do, and because we had those kinds of gifts and opportunities, we would have to, one, fulfill our promise, and two, to help others, to share the resources, the talents that we were given. And so my parents were both college professors, and so my brother and I grew up on a college campus, and in the summers we took summer school they had a kids program for faculty children. And so we were always around people who valued education, who expected a great deal of us, who, you know, if they weren't our parents, they were still parenting us and teaching us. And
so you knew from very early, I bet, that you would be going on to school and to probably graduate school.
Well, that was really expected, mainly because of the sacrifices that had been made for my parents to do the same. In the school that I attended, my mother in particular worked very hard. This was in the mid-1970s. Norfolk was slow to integrate its schools after it had been ordered to do so by the federal courts. And yet my mother knew about this court order, and she knew that it could be the key to my brother and to me getting a high-quality education. And I think that was really what inspired me and helped me understand how important an education is. It was the hard work that she did to make sure that the reluctant school administrators opened the doors for us
So
in
she
schools.
pushed.
Oh, she definitely did. And so there were different quality, schools had different qualities, levels of quality, frankly, based on whether they were in black communities or white communities. Housing was very segregated at that time. And so my mother really worked hard to get us into schools that had high quality teaching, learning opportunities, and typically there was no transportation to those schools provided by the school district, so she used the resources in the community. Other teachers or other church members who were working in the area who could help us with carpooling and things like that. So my experience growing up truly was that proverb that it takes a village.
Which we hear so much now, but maybe didn't quite grasp that as a society years ago, or at least didn't talk about it quite so
I think
openly.
we didn't articulate it, but my experience was that people, not just African Americans or Negroes, as we were called at that time, but white citizens as well, who really saw the fairness of the court order, reached out and helped my parents ensure that my brother and I received a high quality education. So what was not being implemented necessarily by the school district, citizens, members of our communities were really reaching out and making a reality. Now Norfolk has made wonderful strides. And frankly, the mother who pushed to get her children into the schools became a school board member in Norfolk Public Schools. So it is a wonderful story about change and resilience and perseverance that I have.
Perseverance, for sure. Did you end up going to school with mostly white children because of your mother's push and the way the schools were at that time?
That's correct. My brother and I did, and then integration slowly occurred, and certainly by the time that I was in late middle school and high school, our schools were integrated, and so it was, fulfilling the mandate of the courts. It just took longer than I think anyone who hoped to benefit from that court mandate expected, but the school district came around and recognized the value of an integrated learning environment in high-quality schools for all children within a school district.
You have a daughter now, and I don't even know how old she is, but...
She's a young teen.
Young teen. Do you think she understands or can grasp kind of the change that has happened in your life and your mother and father's lives, just in terms of integration and the big shift in our culture?
I think she can, and I'll tell you why. She had a wonderful school assignment over Thanksgiving holiday, and it extended beyond Thanksgiving holiday, but it was planned around the Thanksgiving holiday because so many times families gather together with extended families and generations. Multiple generations get together during that holiday. And so this year she was required to make a biography and to do it graphically, and it was in fact a video presentation with music and a script. So
complex.
Yes, and so she decided that she would interview my mother, and I was very moved, and I know my mother was, to see how powerful my mother's experience was for my daughter and her own understanding of history, of personal strength, of how you rise above adversity, and also about the people who really reach out and help you along the way, because certainly my mother's life had many people who saw her promise and who did what they can to invest in her future. And certainly my daughter has learned about those experiences from talking to my mother, and I've told my daughter about those people who did the same for me. And so it was this wonderful way to see that my daughter, whose experience is quite different, and the things that she takes for granted, like having integrated friend groups and teams and classrooms, that things were different before. So I think she has some appreciation for that.
And that would feel very good, I would think, for you and your husband. As our first female African-American justice here, do you feel a burden, Justice Wright, or pressure to kind of carry on for others besides
It doesn't feel like a burden, but I have high expectations for myself because I have the hopes and dreams of many people before me that I'm inspired by, but I also want to live up to. And so for me, it is not burdensome at all. It's certainly an honor, and it's an honor to serve all of Minnesota. But it makes me realize the value of being able to go to classrooms and talk to students about my experience, the kind of outreach that I can perform in communities of color and of diverse communities, to make sure that children understand what they are capable of and to help them aim high.
And
I
maybe
really
young women more than young men, I would think.
I think both, frankly. It's important to me that young people recognize at an early age, regardless of their background, all of the promise that lies before them. And sometimes that's hard to see because of their circumstances or because they feel like there's no one like them who's achieving. And while many of the people I speak to want to be judges and lawyers, my goal is to reach any young person and help that person understand that, you know, if they really want to do something, they should go for it. They should really aim high and find out how to get from where they are to where they'd like to be and work at it.
That's a great motto and a great goal to put out and talk about out loud. As a judge and as an attorney, what has been the most frustrating, hardest thing for you so far to date in your career? I like to ask that question of all my leaders because I think sometimes viewers think or assume, oh, she's had this wonderful, stellar career. She's not had any rough spots, I bet, and yet almost every leader can speak to some hard times.
Well,
some
certainly.
tough times.
Certainly, and I would never want to leave the impression that it was all easy and that I was always accepted and always expected to be in the place that I am now or with the position and responsibility that I have. And so I guess if I really were to think about it, it is those times when people expected little of me.
Expected too little?
Right. Either because I'm a woman, because of my stature, I'm not very tall, or because of my race, or for any other reason. It's that that underestimation that I would say at times can lead to not having the same opportunities in a work environment or offers of assistance or mentoring. And so if anything, whenever I encountered those lower expectations for me, certainly I would say, you know, sometimes it felt like a gut punch.
I bet.
But it also, once I, you know, picked up my ego and dusted it off, I was incredibly inspired to show them, you know, to beat the odds, to beat the low expectations, and to prove to myself as well what I was capable of. And so it's important for me to have people understand that you certainly can experience self-doubt, but you've got to get beyond that quickly, I think. I think it's human to feel it and to acknowledge it, but it's also really human and something that each one of us is capable of. That would be the ability to exceed, you know, to buck up, to exceed those lower
and to
expectations.
Choose, in a way, you chose to take it as a challenge ultimately rather than as a put down or
absolutely a challenge, an inspiration, a recognition that my forebears, those before me, have had those same experiences. Many of the people that I look to and admire have had those experiences, and what made the difference was their unwillingness to let other people define their low expectations, them by their low expectations, but to set their own, for a person's ability to set his or her own high goals and aspirations and to move forward and try to pursue them.
and maybe go around if you can't go through right at the moment.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to me, my experience has been where you least expect to find, a word of encouragement or someone who says, let me share with you my experience. Maybe this will help you, or that piece of advice. That's always been there if I were willing to listen and look for it. And so I hope others know that as well.
That's an important thing, though, to hear for myself, for others listening, because sometimes those slights or put downs or ignoring kind of behaviors are very subtle. And when they're very subtle, it's almost harder, I think, to do something about it. But
I think
sounds
that's
like
right.
you were perceiving and taking action.
Well, I always asked, why not me? If denied an opportunity. Or if I saw something that I really, really liked or it was excited by an opportunity. And I guess that is the gift, and that's what I'd like to share with others, is that sense of self and self-confidence to be able to say, why not me? If that's what I really would like to pursue.
On that very positive note, we need to break and give people a resource page. I thought that you would like to be able to perhaps read more about our Supreme Court here and about our judicial branch. You can also read more about Justice Wright's career if you go to www.mncourts.gov, mncourts.gov. So check that very, very nice website out. Well, we have about 1 minute left, and this has been wonderful getting to know you and hearing some of your story. Is there any last sentence or two you would like to share, and particularly perhaps to young people listening, beyond what you've already said?
Well, I would suggest that they seize the day, seize the opportunity.
Carpe diem.
Exactly. And then also help others. Make sure that as you are moving forward, that you are also lifting others as you climb.
Well, thank you so much for those words and for your presence tonight. I've enjoyed getting to meet you and work with you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you, too, for joining us. We'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.